Hey, I'm MellyS The Story Collector, and this is the Courage 1000 Project, the show where we share personal stories of inner courage from all around the world to inspire you to find your own. In today's episode, we're talking with Vicki G. Now, Vicki is sharing a story with us about how she has danced in the fire of life, danced with financial loss, autism, helping people contemplating taking their own lives, and then bringing together 27 co-authors from all over the world to inspire hope in the lives of others. She hopes in sharing her stories and her message that you will come to understand that everything you need to be the person you need to be is already within you. Now, Vicki G wears many hats. However, she states that her biggest achievement is her family. Married for 30 years, she has 3 adult sons who she often refers to as her greatest teachers in life, particularly Rick, who is on the autism spectrum. Vicki has an unquenchable thirst for knowledge, and this has led her to become proficient in many areas over the past 20 years. Her passion is in helping women get from feeling stuck and not evolving into a space where they are ever expanding and achieving whatever it is that their heart yearns for. Now, before we get into it, a quick thank you to our episode sponsor, 1000 Ripple Effects. 1000 stories creating healing ripples throughout the world and changing lives. For more information, go to 1000rippleeffects.com. And now, on with the interview. Why do you want to share these particular stories or story with everyone?
Okay. Oh my goodness. Can I go a little bit back further into my past a little bit? I'm way older than you, Melly. So I do have a long history behind me. I used to work predominantly with people who were suicidal through counselling and holistic psychotherapy and workshops.
Yeah.
And I found myself working with a lot of women, particularly of a certain age, like 40 to 60 roughly. And many of those women would come in with their letters of suicide. And it was really sad. You know, they were planning their exit. They were very troubled. And while I was working with them, I thought there's got to be a different way to get to these women way before they even know that they could possibly be in trouble 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
There has to be something that can be done. So when I actually left that work and I thought I was kind of going to retire and do some other things, I started thinking about writing books and finding that getting my writers to actually share their stories to inspire hope in another person.
Yeah.
And it was all about pivotal moments. You know, it was all about finding those pivotal moments, showing how, even if they were difficult, even if they were tragic, challenging, whatever was going on for them, how these pivotal moments are actually gems within their stories.
Yes.
And how they have actually ended up helping these women to become who they are today.
Yeah.
You know, so it's almost like getting in there really early and sharing stories so that someone else is inspired and looks at that and goes, okay, so I'm not the only one going through this stuff.
Yes.
You know, I'm not the only one that's feeling really low. And hopefully changing that way before it gets to the point where they just think that there's nothing else left for them.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of this project, is that courage can't be taught. It has to be found within. So by sharing our stories and sharing them in their detail, we're giving people that jolt to go within and find their own courage to overcome their own circumstances. I love that we are so aligned in this respect.
I know, isn't it exciting? Yeah, you're so right, Melly. You know, you can't teach courage. I really don't think you can teach it. But if I can go a step further, I believe that we can mirror courage. So by discovering it in our own selves, in our own lives, and showing that to people, through our own experiences, showing people that, you know what, if you really look upon your lives, don't dwell too much in the past. I'm not saying stay there, but take what you've learned from the past, bring it into your present so that then you can actually create your future.
Yes.
You know, and that's courageous to do that, because you really have to kind of look around a little bit. You know, you've got to look a little bit into the past. You have to work out, well, am I happy with who I am? What do I need to go back and fix? And then you can start projecting what you really want out into the future.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to function. You know, that's where outer joy comes from, because you've got hope, you've got inspiration when you're looking forward rather than back all the time. So
I love it. So after being in that role and working with these women, you've
yes,
decided books are the way to go. Get them before they end up handing you this very, very deep, heartfelt letter.
absolutely. And people thought I was crazy. People in my industry just thought you're a nut. Like, seriously, this is not going to work.
Yep.
But it has. It has. We've put out one book with 26 of my most amazing, courageous, um, full of integrity, co-authors from all over the world. So they're from 7 different countries, and each one of them has shared a story. Some are a little bit similar, and some are just totally different. But each of them have shared a story. And if you look behind that story, if you look at the foundation of that story, there's always courage.
Yes.
There's always learning and challenges. But what they do is they don't dwell too much on what happened. So it's not a biography, but they take little pivotal moments. They take snippets of that, and then show how the learning that they got from that, what did they get out of it? And then they show you and I, the readers of these stories, how we can take some of that and implement it into our own lives to get through what we're going through.
And it saves us having to live that experience. We learn it through them.
Oh,
and that saves us the heartache, and we thank them for that blessing that they had to go through it for us.
absolutely. I had an 80-plus-year-old lady with a Greek background. So my background's Greek, even though I've got an Italian surname. My husband's Italian. 80-plus-year-old lady that my mother led the book to. And she came here when she was very young as a migrant. Well, she said to my mother that she cried through most of the book, cried for the women and their stories, but she also cried from joy because of the learning that these women had done. And she said to my mother, I thought you had to get to your 70s and 80s to actually get it. She said, but these women are showing that with a little bit of work, they actually learnt a lot about themselves and their lives. And she was so inspired and so touched by that. And it gave her hope for women moving forward as well. And that just lit me up when I heard that.
Yeah. So why is this so important to you? You kind of said why it's important as a society, and I completely agree with you there. But personally, why is this important to you?
It's important to me on a couple of levels, I think. Or one is, of course, I don't want to see another woman, I don't want to see another woman get to the point where they feel that they need to take their own lives.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised. I shouldn't have been with my background, but I was quite surprised when my own co-authors, some of them in their stories, have mentioned that they had got to that point, And so I don't want to see that pattern happening all the time. And I think also, Melly, if I could take it a step further, we've really lost that village mentality, once upon a time, I don't know, 100 years ago or so, I'm looking back at my Greek background, even though I was born here in Australia, I remember my grandmother talking about the fact that, anytime she had a problem, she would just get a couple of the girls, the neighbours out, they'd gather together and they'd make some food or whatever they would do, and they would talk about their issues and their problems.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I don't really know my neighbours that well. We wave, we say hi, we've had a coffee once in the past year and a half. We don't have that thing. So I guess through the books too, I also look at it as creating a little bit of a tribe, a little bit of a village.
Yeah.
So it's a series of books that we're creating. The next one, for example, is called Wise Women Rise. And then we have Wisdom Whisperings, Wisdom Whisperings is going to be interesting because that's just a tiny little share, one page where it's almost like it's a vessel of knowledge that women are sharing that has been passed down from one woman to another in their families or through their friends. So it's like, why lose all that stuff? Why don't we just share that kind of thing? Whether it's through a poem or through a story or however they want to share it. So it is all about that as well. So one is to let's save some women from going down that deep, dark road, which is horrible. And also let's create that village again. I know I'm craving it all the time.
Yes.
I want that. I want like-minded people around me. So it's a little bit of that as well.
Yeah. And I think society, we created this beautiful thing called the internet to connect people, and all of a sudden disconnected us from those who are physically in our area.
How true is that?
It's had a double-edged sword for us.
Absolutely. I mean, you go out, you go to a restaurant, and it's happened to me where we've been sitting there and the whole family on the next table are all on their phones. Kids, mum, dad, everyone's on their phone, and you think, wow, really? Why don't you just stay home? So we have lost that. The internet the internet has been incredible in so many different ways, but it's also created some very new problems for us as well. You know, and I could go on. That's another interview there. Especially with what it's doing to women and young women today. I think there are a lot of issues. Yeah.
So through all these stories that you've collected then, which I love saying that because it's very similar to what I'm doing, what would you say is the biggest learning you've received from their stories?
I guess, look, when I first put the call out to find my co-authors, you know, I wasn't looking for writers. I was just looking for women with something to share because, you know, I'm a really good writer, and I jump in there and I do a lot of the work with them, for them. I ghostwrite, whatever my authors need, I'm there for them. So that part didn't worry me. But I guess the biggest learning for me was that most of these women that got on calls with me to be interviewed, just, you know, to be accepted in the book, would say, I really don't think that my story is that important to share.
Yeah.
And I was just dumbfounded. It was like, are you kidding me? Like, really? Like, you know, they would share their story first and then they'd say, it's really not worthy of being in a book, is it? You know, I just, and it happened, Melly, I interviewed 157 women for Dance in the Fire of Life, and I would have to say that at least 120 or 130 of those women said that in the conversation somewhere along the line.
Yeah, yeah. It's a big problem, isn't it?
It is a problem. It is.
Yeah.
It is. So if we think of that, you know, if these women are thinking of themselves in that way, that their story doesn't really matter. Basically what they're saying is, my story really doesn't matter. But it's had such a huge effect on them and it's changed them, but they can't see the correlation between that and how important it is to share their story. Yes. So it wasn't until I started writing, and I offer these masterclasses for my authors, and they come on every so often, and they were coming onto these calls, and all of a sudden, when all these women were together on these calls, they started to realise, just by talking to each other, and they started to realise that, oh my gosh, I do have something to share. I have something incredible to share. Yeah. And this could change another person's life, which, you know, it has through these books. So,
I had the exact same experience through my photography and videography. Right. The people would sit in front of the camera and they'd be like, oh, I shouldn't tell that one. It's not important. I'm like, that is really important. You need to be sharing that.
Yeah,
it's definitely a big problem in society. It's the self-worth and self-belief that it really comes back to.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, but predominantly women, are missing that. You know, they're missing that self-confidence. And I think, you know, as a society today, a lot of people just don't know who they are. You know, they don't know where they fit in. They don't know what's important. There's a lot of fear about sharing. And, you know, what are people going to say? What are they going to think? How are they going to react? Is anyone going to troll me on social media? Yeah. All that kind of stuff. But when you put all of that aside and you just do what you need to do, you have a beautiful outcome, I think, you know, and not worry about that stuff.
Yeah. So how important is it to you now collecting these stories?
Oh, I can't tell. I don't, you can probably tell. I am so passionate about the work that I'm doing. And it's so joyful now because I'm not dealing with, you know, people that are in a really dark place all the time. And I really also, I'm going on and on now, but once the book came out, I realised even more so what an impact that book was having. That was always an intention, but, you know, there's a little voice in the back of your head saying, well, maybe it's not going to work out the way you want it to, Vicki, you know. But it did. You know, we're getting so much feedback. So it's been incredible. It's been an incredible journey. I've learned a heck of a lot about myself, about people, about other women, about other people's lives. You know, I'm just so grateful. But the passion, I'm so passionate about this. I can't tell you. I can't wait for the next one to come out. So, yeah.
It oozes off you. You can see it.
I get embarrassed a little bit sometimes thinking, just calm down, Vicki. You know what it is,
never hide it, never hold it back.
I also love the the relationships that I get to build with all these women, my co-authors, you know, I fall in love with each and every one of them. And if they were on the call now, they would laugh and say, she really does. You know, I'm like the mama bear. I'm very protective of them. I just want to make sure that their stories come out in their voice, even though I may be helping them write it and I'll be talking to them constantly. We're working on things together. It has to be their voice. It has to be their story and in their tone. So, and sometimes that's a little bit challenging, you know, for me, because I just want to take over and fix things and, you know, but I sit back and I help them as much as I can, but allow them to come forward. So it is them. It is their story at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And you do have to give them that space to explore their own story and find the meaning in it for those bits that they've forgotten.
Absolutely. And some of them now have become so courageous, to use your term, I'm stealing that now, courageous that they want to do their own books with me. You know, like they want to do their own book in their own right. Now, they're the same women that a year and a bit ago were saying, I don't have a story, I have nothing to share, who's going to listen to me? You know, and they've stood up now going, wow, I've made a difference with 3,000 words.
Yeah.
Imagine what I could do with a whole entire book, you know. So that's great. That's really exciting. And I guess the other thing too, Melly, is some of these women are in business. You know, a lot of them are in business. They're either coaches or psychologists or whatever work they're doing in the helping industries. And they're exceptional. They've been doing that kind of work for 20 years or more in some cases. And no one knows who they are. So this is another way to get them out there and show credibility and, you know, just highlight them a little bit and say, hey, you know, these people have been working in this industry for a long time and they're willing to open up and share themselves with you. So it helps them gain work. It helps them to gain speaking engagements, podcasts, all of that kind of thing too. Yeah.
And once you've stood up and shared your own story, people have that personal connection with you. So then they want to work with you. They trust you.
Exactly. It's different, you know, when you're on social media, you're on Twitter or you're on Facebook or whatever, you see this tiny little photo, you know, unless you're doing Facebook Lives all the time, you don't get to know the person that you'd like to work with. So I think it's really important to do something where you're putting yourself out there. If you really have a gift or a talent, or you've been the experience in something that you've been doing for a long time and you can help someone else, well, get out there and put your hand up and say, I'm here, you know, in some capacity, in some way. So,
So what does courage mean to you then? Because we've used that word quite a bit.
Do you know, I've actually thought about that a lot because, you know, even though I've been joking about that being your word, I actually use it a lot. I used to use it a lot in my coaching practice as well. Courage for me is more about becoming resilient. You know, they're very, very close, those words. They're very, very close. But I think you have to build courage in order to become resilient. Resilience is almost like the outcome, you know, the result. So to me, it's about becoming resilient. And I guess keeping that up, like it's so easy to say, yeah, I'm going to be courageous, and you know, it's like, right, I'm going to break this, you know, this brick wall that's in front of me, and I'm going to get through that this week, and I'm going to do something else to combat a fear. But unless you just keep the consistency up, you can fall back again, and it's okay to fall back occasionally, but then get back up again, you know. So it's consistency in order to become resilient, I think.
Yeah. I like that. That's one of the truths that I discovered, was that courage is a muscle. And it needs to be exercised, because if you don't exercise it, it gets weak.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy. Yeah.
So how do you use courage in your own life then?
Oh, Melly, where do I start?
I know, I ask questions.
You ask great questions. I love them. Where do I use courage in my own life? I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples just really quick. I have 3 boys, and my middle one is just about to turn 30. I know that I only look like I'm 12, but yeah, he's almost. And he's autistic, and we believe that he may have had some sort of brain damage at birth as well. So, you know, he's had a lot of challenges. But as a 26-year-old mum, when I first had him, leading up to about the age of 30, 32, I was studying everything I can get my hands on, because I believed it was something that was not quite right with him. There was something missing with him, you know, there were some challenges. I was comparing him to my son who was 2 years older, and there was just such a huge difference in the two. But the medical, all the doctors and all the specialists looked at me as this young, you know, young woman who was running around trying to get a diagnosis for her son because they believed at the time that I had, which is ridiculous now, but I had Munchausen's by proxy.
Oh,
now,
okay.
do you know what that is?
Yes,
It's where you want your child to be sick, or you're slowly actually killing that child in order to get attention for yourself.
Yeah.
So, you know, here I am, 26 to 30. I thought I was going crazy, and they wanted to put me on antidepressants. So I had to build up the courage to keep going down that road that I knew that my intuition was guiding me to.
Yeah.
Because the only reason I wanted a diagnosis for my child was so that I could help him a lot quicker.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
I knew exactly what was going on. I didn't know what to do with him, you know.
Yeah.
So that's where I learned courage for the very, very first time.
Yeah.
Because I was so scared. I was so scared they were going to lock me up somewhere. I was so scared they were going to start medicating me and I'd lose my mind. You know, I had all these fears, but I was breaking through those fears for my son, and nothing was going to stop me. So that was courage. That was the very first time in my life where I can look back and say, that was the first lesson in courage that I really had. It was like, well, Vicki, if you don't ignore what they're telling you and what they're trying to convince you of, well, then you're not going to help your son. So that was the very first one.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I've had other things. Yeah. I've had a lot of other things. You know, I started working with people who were suicidal at the age of 38. I was 38 when I started, and I'm now in my mid-50s. And I remember thinking at the time, just all this self-doubt and, you know, lack of self-belief in myself. And I kept thinking, this is really serious stuff now, Vicki. You've grown up, you know, you're working with people that really need a lot of help. Can you do it? You know,
Yeah.
So it took a lot of courage to break through that thinking and do what I needed to do. And I know that along the way I've helped hundreds of people, you know.
Yeah.
So, so I think they're the two main things in my life. You know, we've had severe money loss through a family business, and, you know, and having to wake up, for example, with $200 between my husband and I, and three little kids, and one's autistic, you know, has a lot of special needs. And that was a huge one too. That went on for about 8 years of battling that one, and it took courage every day to get up, get out of bed.
Yeah.
You know, so there have been a few, but I think the one I shared with you about Rick is probably the first time I ever experienced true courage, because it took a lot.
Yeah.
It took a lot to fight these guys who I respected. You know, they were specialists. Who was I?
Yeah.
Yeah, who was I? Nobody.
And it's funny how our intuition really helps with our courage, because we know the truth. We know what needs to be done, and then having that courage to follow it, and then stand against those who are doubting us, and standing in our truth and saying, no, I know this is correct and I'm going to follow it to the end.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, when you do ignore your own intuition, when it's screaming at you like mine does at me sometimes, you know, you either become sick, you become ill, or you become emotionally unstable, or something goes wrong in your life, because that's just more of the screaming. By this stage, you know, someone up there has put you up against a wall saying, come on, don't you get it? You know, what are you doing? You know what the right thing is. Don't go down another path. So that's what it felt like for me. It was like every day that I woke up, you know, during those years, I'd look at my son and think, no, I'm going to keep doing what I think is instinctively right.
Yeah.
And it was hurting me, because, you know, like I said, these specialists were speaking to each other, and they'd already diagnosed me with a mental illness that I did not have. But, you know, in those days, it was quite scary. You know, we didn't have a lot of rights either. You know, I could go on and on and on. So it took a lot of courage. It really did. And I have no qualms in saying that either. You know, a lot of people will say, I'm not courageous. You know, like, no, I was courageous. You know, I was really courageous. I found that, I discovered that, and I built that muscle, like you rightly said, along the way, because I had no choice.
I like it. So do you think a lot of courage does come from not having a choice?
Yes, I think it does. I really do, Melly. I think, look, there are a lot of people that do some courageous things. I guess the word can be interpreted in so many different ways. Someone that climbs a mountain, for example, that's courageous, but and there's choice in that. They've chosen to do that, or but when you're dealing with everyday life, things that aren't exceptional, aren't extraordinary like that, if you get to a point where you have no choice at all, you can end up doing some extraordinary things that you never thought you were capable of doing.
Yes.
But the great thing about that is when you do it once and you've had that experience, again, like what we were talking about before, pivotal moments in your life, they end up serving you really well if you take notice of them. So, if you go through something and you show courage and you overcome it like I did, I finally got a diagnosis, and never an apology from all these doctors and specialists, mind you.
Of course not.
I had already had, in my hands. It was like, this child is autistic and there's something else going on. And when we finally got that diagnosis, he was 5.5, I think, at the time. Yeah, so I was about 32 years old. And I sat back and I actually realised that this all happened because of what I pushed through.
Yes.
So after that moment, it was like any other challenge that came through. I knew that I could do it because I've done it in such a big way before. Everything else seemed like it wasn't as big anymore, the challenges. So it became easy for me, and then people say to you, oh, you're a superwoman, you're just so courageous, you're incredible. It's like, yeah, but had you gone through what I had gone through, you'd be a superwoman, you'd be able to call yourself that too. If you not that I take that on board, that didn't sound right, but you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Yeah.
You could do anything, because when you don't have a choice, well, what are you going to do?
Exactly.
What are you going to do? How do you give up on him?
I like it. And I can see now why you are so passionate about helping other people find those pivotal moments in their life, which in turn finds their courage, because you lived that. You lived that. Yeah.
Yes. And I want other people to find that, because like we were saying before, it is a choice. And some people have gone through some extraordinary things, but they haven't realized, the penny hasn't dropped, that what they did in that moment was courageous, or was, incredible. They found their genius. They found their true self within themselves, They found their purpose within themselves in some people, and some people haven't recognized that yet. So by coming into the books and writing and doing some of the masterclasses and all of that we do, it's an amazing experience, because it's also very cathartic. It's also, the light bulb goes off a lot of times, and it's like, oh my gosh, now I get what you were talking about. So, and that was a bonus. I didn't realize that my intention for the books was to help my readers. But what's happened is there is not one co-author that will tell you that they didn't get anything out of everything that we did. They come out of it going, wow. Like I'm a coach of, I've coached hundreds of people, and yet I didn't realize I hadn't seen something in my life. So it was quite enlightening for everybody, including myself. I learned so much. I probably learned more than anybody else on the journey, because I'm reading so many stories. So I'm pulling things out going, yeah, I get that. I can relate to that, So
yeah. I like it. I like it. So effectively you're taking stuff that's in their blind spot and bringing it right into their vision so they can address it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you feel you are destined to make an impact in this world, but are struggling to find the courage to share your story? Jump over to mellys.com.au for free training, presentations and videos, or simply stay tuned for the next episode of the Courage 1000 project.